Let me say it again. I said I'm not. Right. Okay. Right. So if you ever are going to forget, if you are forgetful, right? If you're going to choose, if you are able to choose what to forget, do not choose to forget specificity. Make sure whatever you're writing about, whether it's current issues or global perspectives, Nicola is going to be expecting the same thing as well. Are you breaking down into the subjects, into specifics, right? You know, every time you get an annotation in your assignment when it's marked where we say, please expand, please be specific, those are the sort of things we are looking at, right? We will do some activities, exercises in class, just to practice doing this in an assignment, if that helps. Okay. Right. Right, we've done that, haven't we? Okay. Right, so that's what we've covered in the first presentation. Now we are going to move into the second one, and then I'm going to let you go wherever you want to go today. It's a Friday. Right. Right. Okay, so we've done that. Now let's move on to the next item on our agenda. Now, this is going to be about ethics. Remember, there is a learning outcome that covers ethics. What learning outcome is it? LO3. Is it? Oh, no, it must be LO1. Assess the possibilities for developing practice that meets the highest ethical standards. Right? So this has to do with learning outcome 1. I'm not always going to tell you this relates to this learning outcome. Some of the content cuts across all learning outcomes. Okay? But this one is primarily interested in L or 1 ethics. Okay? Now ignore that. I don't expect that in your assignment, okay? I don't even know why it's there. Right? Top part is what you are interested in, okay? Right, so ethical standards, principles, theory, and practice, okay? Now, one more thing that I want to emphasize is I expect you to link whatever you write about to practice, okay? How do you do that? When you use examples, you are linking what you have discussed or what you are discussing to practice. When you say, for example, a child in such a situation, that section is linking to practice. I do not know if you have learned about a guy called Benjamin Bloom. Yes, no? No. Okay. So at least I feel like I'm adding some value to your wealth of knowledge, right? Now, Bloom and Company, from 1956 to 1971, I covered this in my new book, by the way. Okay, 1956 to 1951, they came up with what they called the taxonomy of educational objectives. Now, the word taxonomy is just complicating a simple concept or a simple phenomenon, taxonomy, right? Now, taxonomy simply means hierarchy, okay? Maybe they didn't want to sound Maslowic, okay, so they chose a different word, taxonomy, hierarchy of educational objectives. Now, they divided learning into 3 domains. The word domain means areas, right? Into 3 areas or 3 spheres. They had what is known as the cognitive domain, which is the knowledge aspect of learning. So cognitive has to do with knowing. That was the first one. And then the second one is called the affective domain, Affective has to do with attitudes and emotions. Okay? Affective, not effective, but affective with A. Okay, now the affective domain had to do with the emotions, the attitudes. And the last one, the psychomotor domain. Psychomotor is all one word. Psychomotor is what was also known as the doing domain. So if you are going to look at learning, you are interested in learning in those across those three domains, right? Not just the cognitive, i.e. the knowledge or the knowing domain. You're interested in, okay, what does the learner know? And then you move on to, okay, from what these learners learned, if their attitudes about, for example, children with autism, have they been influenced in a positive way, right? Where you show your attitudes towards a certain subject, okay? And then, okay, we have looked at that. Are they able to actually do, you're on the psychomotor level, in the psychomotor domain? Can you actually put into practice what you have learned, right? That's where we look at what you are doing in practice. You know, when you give examples from practice, for example, this particular lesson, this particular module is going to ask you to write about what is happening in your practice. So we will, or I will expect some references to actual practice, so what you're actually doing to address the current issue, to improve the circumstances of children under your care. So we're looking at the psychomotor. So it's three sort of domains. Now the one that is emphasized on most is the cognitive domain. Now I will talk you through the cognitive because it's very, very relevant to what we are doing today. Right, okay. Now, it doesn't matter what level you are at, right? Whether it's primary school, key stage 1, key stage 2, key stage 3, or high school, or FE, wherever assessment is done, Benjamin Bloom and company have had an influence. All assessed work is assessed on those domains, regardless of level, even at PhD level. Right, I'll show you the domains. Right? Now, different people word this differently. Right, I'm trying to have a look at okay, where are we? Bear with me, folks. I'm looking at, yeah. No, right, there you go. Can you see from where you are? Okay? Now this is only looking at the cognitive domain. Okay? If you want to understand more about the affective and the psychomotor, and this is going to be out soon, you'll be able to understand everything else, right? Now the cognitive domain is what your assessment grid is based on. You know the assessment matrix. This one on page 6 of the module handbook. Every module handbook has this table, and this is where we determine where your work falls within. Is it in the 70s on different aspects, right? Can you say this? You can see similarities, right? Along these columns. Similarities between this and that. The words that are used or the terms that are used are different, but they're looking at the same thing. So you have your knowledge and understanding, reflection and analysis. So that's what you have on this one. Now let's focus on this, and then you'll be able to make links between that and this. Now here, you have your knowledge, right? Now, if someone was being awarded marks, right, from the lowest to the highest, okay, knowledge is whereby you are only able to identify, you are relying on your memory. Do you remember the facts that you were taught? If you can outline the 5 ECM outcomes, just outlining them without expanding or explaining them, you are demonstrating you have remembered them. Okay? So that's the knowledge bit. You know, you are aware of them. Right? And then the next level is, I want to see whether you understand each of those ECM outcomes. That's when you are going to expand on them, right? So here you are recalling information, discovering, observing, and there, comprehension, you are showing understanding. Can you define those outcomes? Where we say define these key terms, you are showing your understanding. You have shown your knowledge by identifying the key terms are, right, ethics, diversity, equality, right? And then you begin to define, right? There are many different definitions of diversity, right? The most common definition is, that's where you are showing your understanding. You're still describing, you're still descriptive, but it is important that you do that. Okay, so your marks are going up and up and up. And then application is important. Can you apply what you're discussing to practice, right? For example, in practice, diversity is seen through having children from different backgrounds, maybe it's ethnic background or socioeconomic class and so on and so forth. What you're now doing there is showing how what you've learned applies in practice, right? So in practice, to show that a practitioner understands and appreciates diversity, when they come across children from a range of backgrounds, this is what they ought to do, or in practice, this is what is done in order for practitioners to be inclusive when it comes to children from a range of backgrounds. And when you itemize the sort of things that practitioners are doing to show that they are appreciative of diversity, that is what we call application. Now, I always say to students, examples, examples, examples. For every concept you are discussing, you need to give at least one example. What you're doing there is you're showing application of what you're discussing to practice. When you give examples, those are examples from practice, right? So that's application. If it is a practical skill, you want to actually do it and demonstrate it. But if it is something that is conceptual, same way it applies in practice also passes as application. Fine, you've done that, okay? You're still describing. And then you get into analysis. So up to here, if you are here, that is below 40, that doesn't pass. If you just show knowledge, doesn't pass. Comprehension, maybe you're talking upper 30s, close to 40, depending on to what extent your comprehension is. Here, you're talking between 40 and 50 in terms of marks. Okay? Analysis, you're now getting closer to the 60s, 65, and you can get even into the 70s with analysis. But in the 60s, if you are analytical, right? So there now you are looking at a subject more closely. That's where I'm saying you combine what you've read with your own interpretation to come up with some kind of meaning, to make sense of what it is that you are discussing, and what are the trends, what are the patterns. Can you see the patterns between different authors? Where do they differ? Where do they agree? And then where is the therefore, right? Now, synthesis is bringing a range. You remember my example of the ingredients? Yeah, you're bringing in all sorts of information to come up with a new understanding, right? That's where you are going to actually be earning high marks. Evaluation is then considering where the limitations are or where the strengths are. That's the highest. Now, the most important thing, just like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you cannot meet the next need, the need that is at the next level before you've met the one at the bottom. There's no way in which you can evaluate without showing that you know. Right? So for you to get there, you must go through everything that's here. So an assignment that does that, we have ticked everything here. Is it making sense?
Yeah.
Assessment at any level is based on that. It's only adapted to that particular level. Yeah? So that's where we are. One more thing to add to your email, Frankie. We need to exercise, we need to do exercises just to practice doing that before the assignments come.
What do you want?
In our, the 9 to 9:30 tutorial, the academic session, we'll need one session where we are practicing doing that before we have submitted our assignments. Yeah? So you just write one paragraph that shows all those elements, just one paragraph, as a way of practicing until we get it right. 9 to 9:30 is where we are practicing, where we are going to be free to make mistakes because it's not a high-stakes exercise. Okay?
When you were talking about like application bit, you'd still be talking in a third person?
Yes. Application, what you're saying is, in practice, right, or practitioners tend to, or for example, a practitioner who encounters a child with this problem solves it in the following way. Or to apply, enjoy, and achieve to practice, this is what practitioners in a setting are doing, and they are applying. You can actually use the word to apply if you want to your reader to actually grasp that you are now applying. Okay. What I said to students previously is when you are writing your assignments, write as if you are writing for a 5-year-old in terms of clarity. It's got to be as clear. Write as if you are writing for someone who doesn't know anything about the subject. That's why you need to define the concept, even though I know the definitions myself, but you need to define the concepts. The reason why you ought to define your concepts is because any word, any topic, any concept has many meanings, and there's no word that has a meaning except when used in context. So you want to say, in the context of this essay, this word is going to be taken to mean, or the operational definition of this word in this assignment is going to be. You operationalize or contextualize your definitions to your assignment. If you do not do that, the marker is going to define it for you, and guess what? The marker may have a different definition to yours. So if they already have a different definition to yours, what it means is your work is going to be quote-unquote mismarked. In other words, the author, the reader does not understand your work. If they don't understand it, they won't pass it. So most of the time, when students do not pass, it's not because what they write does not make sense, it's simply because the marker does not understand what they're reading, so they failed. Yeah? That's most of the time. Of course, there are some times where the students just been lazy, they submit 1 page instead of 13. Okay, we've seen that previously. But most of the time, students know what they are writing about, but they failed to communicate with their reader. So make it simple. Clarity, specificity, breaking down things. Okay, are we all good here? Is it helpful? Yeah. I just feel like we are making some progress. Maybe I'm deluded, I don't know. Okay. Right. So 9 to 9:30, but don't miss that session, please. Yeah. But that's where we are going to be. That's where you will pass your assignments, 9 to 9:30 every Friday. What we do in that session is going to help you pass. Now, what I'm trying to do here very quickly, okay, examine, wow, time is flying. Did I overplan? Just shows my passion. By the way, you're my personal tutor group, right?
Yeah.
So you can see why I'm investing so much time in you. Anyway, right. Three A's for this presentation. Right, we're going to look at ethics in great detail. And then we'll also debate on who decides what is ethically right. And then critically analyze ethics in relation to political arguments. And after you've done that, you can head to the pub. Yeah. Okay. Now, ethics is an interesting concept. When you say ethics, what is ethical is not necessarily legal, and what is legal is not necessarily ethical. Now, what makes things more complex for our sector, unlike other sectors which are more prescriptive than ours, like nursing and midwifery, they have a code of ethics. In social work, they have a code of ethics that's written down. In our sector, nothing is written down when it comes to ethics. We don't have an ethical code. That makes it both interesting and frustrating. Now, ethics have to do with what is right and what is wrong. Now, this has to do with morals, your belief, your sense of conscience, right? It's not written. For example, if a child, on the street, a child falls over and the child is crying, right? If you pick up the child, it's not your child, someone else's child, right? If you pick up the child and console the child, you've done right. But you're also faced with the dilemma. That's one other thing that ethical issues present to people. They present dilemmas. Yeah? Because there's no straightforward way of approaching a situation. If you act, you are potentially doing both wrong and right. If you do not act, you are potentially doing wrong and right. So you are caught between a rock and a hard place. Is it a rock and a hard place, or a hard place and a rock? Why does that matter? When you learn English as a second language, you want to understand the rationale behind everything. Right. Some people say knife and right, and others want to say.
No one says fuck and knife.
Oh, seriously?
No.
Don't say no one until you've come to Zimbabwe. Because in Zimbabwe we start with that. Now the reason why I don't want to say this word, previously students have accused me of swearing. This word here, because my pronunciation sounds as if I am saying something else other than what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm not going to say, that's why I use, this is my go-to tool when I'm not very confident in pronouncing words like this one. Anyway, yeah. Okay, right, so this and knife, okay, I'm not going to say it, right, knife and, yeah? Okay, you're caught between, did you say rock comes first? I'm not going to ask you why, because you don't know, do you? Right, you don't know what to do, and what not to do. If you pick someone else's child and you're trying to console them, you're thinking, oh, people are going to cry, pedophile, they're trying to harm my child, right? You may be misconstrued. Therefore, you just go and leave the child crying. But your conscience is pounding, is torturing you. You've done the wrong thing. You're an early years practitioner. What did you do that degree for? Like, many times coming from the gym, I jog to the gym and then back. I don't drive to the gym. Yeah, what's the point of going to the gym driving when you want to exercise? Anyway, let's leave it like that. Right. Okay, so many times I go to the gym, but I come across mothers pushing their little babies in prams and smoking and blowing all that nicotine onto the child. And you're thinking, right, what are you doing? Should I intervene? Should I not? Right? Because there's a fine line between intervention and interference. Where you think you're intervening, someone will think you're interfering. So what I do, I just... But I'm thinking, right, that's not right. This child, passive smoking is just as bad as active smoking. And this child's lungs, how strong are they? At this age, the child is already smoking. So that's an ethical issue I'm struggling with. If I intervene, I may actually offend someone, right? I've done good for the baby, but probably I've done bad for the adult. If I do not intervene, I have done good for the adult because she would think that I've respected her privacy, but I've done bad for the child. So you are, whether you act or not, you are doing wrong and right in the same breath. Now those are what we call ethical issues, right? If after, say, 5 p.m., right, what time do you finish today? 5:30? Right, if at 5:31 you come and say, Conte, can I see you for a minute? And I say, oh no, it's after 5:30. I'm going to Liverpool. Legally, you cannot hold that against me. But because my contract says 5:30 I finished work. Okay? But ethically, I'm bound to, just giving you the 5 minutes and helping you. That's the ethical side of it. If I do not help you after 5:30, no one is going to say, why did I not help you? Because it was after hours. It's just like asking me to help you during the weekend. Okay? I'm not. Right. So that's a demonstration of how ethical issues are difficult to deal with. There's an example of a police officer in full uniform. Someone was drowning, right, in a pool of water somewhere under a bridge. Someone is drowning. So the police officer jumps by instinct, no thinking at all, like human instinct to help, to support, and to save lives. Jumps into the pool of water in full uniform and rescues this poor guy. And he was hailed as a hero. But in this workplace, they were saying, you have no training to do that. You could actually have caused more, how do you pronounce this? Harm. Every time I say it, people think I'm talking about a sandwich. Right? Okay, so you do more harm than good. Yeah? And they were thinking of disciplining him. Just saved a life, right? Ethically, you've done brilliantly. However, you've gone against the protocols of your workplace, the dictates of your job. If he had not acted, the community would have said, how could he just watch? Right? So ethical issues, most of the time, there's no written code to follow. Right and wrong are not straightforward. Okay? I'll give you so many examples. So there are questions surrounding which option, should I act, should I not act, potential impact of your actions and decisions, or sometimes your inaction. Sometimes situations arise where it's a matter of life or death. And as a result, that presents a dilemma. Now, in your essay, I would expect you to mention what dilemmas that particular current issue causes practitioners when it comes to ethical issues. Right? So I would expect that word somewhere. What is the dilemma when it comes to dealing with that issue? Because you cannot discuss ethics without discussing the dilemmas people face. Because ethics at their core are not straightforward. And that lack of straightforwardness, quote unquote, presents those dilemmas. Okay. Are we okay to move on? Am I still on the same page as you? Have I not lost anyone on ethics? Are we still flowing together? Despite the fact that it's almost 20 past 4 on a Friday. Right. Now, the other thing regarding ethics is, what is ethical? When you talk about what is ethical, we're talking about what is morally right. The other question, the other problem we have is what is morally right to me may not of necessity be morally right to Imogen. Their name, right? That makes it difficult because there are going to be inconsistencies. Even in the same setting, what's ethical to one practitioner may not be ethical to the next. Because different practitioners have different viewpoints, and what affects and shapes and influences our viewpoints, our ethical viewpoints, right, is a variety of things. Our history, backgrounds, what we read, the media, our gender sometimes. There's a difference between sex and gender. Yeah? Do you know the difference? No. Go and find out the difference between sex and gender. Okay, the two don't mean the same. Sex, that's biological, that's how one is born and how one presents at birth. Gender is how someone perceives themselves as, regardless of how they were born. So gender is a construction. Sex is biology, right? Now all that affects people's views on what is ethically right, your ideologies and so on. It's a range of things. That makes it difficult to come up with one acceptable ethical code. Now, we have from the British Association for Counseling and Psychotherapy, they have their own principles. These are the commonly used ethical principles in most professions, and they are based on, I will tell you what's the name of the guy soon, okay? I can tell you the first name, the second name you find out why I did not say the second name, right? The first name is Emmanuel, okay? But beneficence is doing good, right? It comes from the word benefit. Of what benefit is your action to the child? Okay? When it comes to the current issue, right? How do strategies that are used to address the current issue benefit the child? What is it that is being done to address that current issue? And in what way is it of benefit? When you're doing that, you're looking at the beneficence of it. Okay, to do good. And then non-maleficence is doing no, did you say harm? Yeah? Don't okay, I'm not going to pronounce that word, okay? Okay, where's the word? It's gone. Yeah. Doing no, yeah. to the client. Now replace client with child. Because this is psychotherapy, they call their service users clients, but no, calling children clients, I think is stretching it. Okay. And then there's respect for autonomy. Even though you want to support someone, you want to leave room for that person to make their own decisions. All right? In what way, if you are looking for example, children's mental health issues, in what way are children being enabled to make certain decisions that help with them mitigating the mental health issues they face? Right? Autonomy is there. Remember Children Act 1989, the voice of the child shall be heard on all matters or decisions that have to do with that child's life. You covered that, right? Children Act 1989.
Yeah.
Now, where is the child's voice in your current issue? When you talk of where is the child's voice, we are alluding to that autonomy, independent thought, their emotion, their feeling on that particular issue. And then you have fairness and justice. It's another principle. In the actions that are being taken or strategies that are being used to address your current issue, right? Can you say there is fairness and justice in how they are being applied? Are children in similar circumstances being treated equally, for example? Are they getting the necessary support they need? Is it adequate enough? All that is to do with fairness and justice. For example, in mental health, we know that children have very limited access to the support they need with mental health, and that is making their mental health issues worse. Right? So you can question the fairness and justice there. And I've heard of instances where children wait for maybe 2.5 years before they can see a specialist. And imagine what is happening in the intervening period. Remember that practitioners are not trained in supporting children with mental health. Right? When they do their degrees, their BTECs in childcare, childhood studies, there's no module that covers mental health. And suddenly, they are placed in a setting where they are going to come in contact with children with mental health issues. I've constantly said, when I qualified as teacher, qualified twice, right? In Zimbabwe, I got my qualified teacher status in primary education. Came over here, qualified to teach key stages 3 and 4. Not a single day was children's mental health mentioned when I was doing my teacher training. But as soon as you get out of that graduation hall, right, you go to the pub, enjoy, jump up and down, and so on and so forth. Right, the next working day, when you get to the classroom, you're going to face children who need your support with mental health issues, but you cover nothing, absolutely nothing to do with mental health when you did teacher training. And personally, I felt embarrassed. Sometimes you want to hide your qualification because what did you do in university if you didn't cover mental health? How are you going to support these children? Mental health issues, right? So that makes worse the situation whereby children are not getting adequate support with mental health issues. And that speaks to the fairness and justice of how we are treating children. I've had in some instances children who are very young as primary age children, they have suicidal thoughts. That's a sign of things getting worse and worse and worse. Why? Because there is no early intervention. The practitioners have no training in mental health issues. If they try to do or to support children in an area they have no training in, they will be blamed. You don't have training in this. So if things go wrong, people will question your judgment, your decisions. You can only do what you're trained to do. It's like taking an aeroplane and attempting to fly it when you don't have any training in it. So you will be labeled irresponsible. So you see a child suffer, you want to support them, but you are constrained by policy, by regulation, by the limitations of your training. Fairness and justice. Yeah? And then you have truthfulness and trustworthiness. Am I okay to use our tutorial time for the session? And then we won't have tutorial today. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because I had a lot, because we are supposed to start tutorial at 4:30. I had a lot to cover because of introduction, then we have to do this presentation. In other sessions, we only have one presentation. Okay. Are you all in agreement?
Sorry, what time did you say?
No, tutorial starts at 3:30.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we'll just get into tutorial time teaching this, and there's not going to be a tutorial afterwards. We'll just go after this presentation.
Okay.
I should be done by 5 anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So you have trustworthiness and truthfulness. Thank you for your understanding, by the way. Right. Trustworthiness and truthfulness has to do with honoring the trust placed in the practitioner. Right. Do we honor the trust that's bestowed in us? There have been circumstances, not too many. It's the bad things which tend to be highlighted by the news, right? One journalist was asked to define news. Journalist in Zimbabwe said, "But how do you define news? What is news?" And he had one simple definition. He said, right, okay, if a dog bites a person, that is not news. But if a person bites a dog, that is news. Right? So what they're saying is, news is only news if something has happened that is unusual. So what I'm saying is, the cases that tend to be reported in the news in our sector are whereby things have gone wrong, and this can actually be blown out of proportion to the effect that people will think we are not doing our jobs right. Okay. Now, there are very few instances where children have been abused. Okay? And where you find practitioners abusing children, whether it's emotionally, verbally, or physically, that trustworthiness is gone. Because they are not honoring the trust that has been bestowed on them by their setting, by the parents, by the community, by the government. Right? Now, when it comes to current issue, do you think what practitioners are doing in practice is honoring the trust bestowed in them? For example, are they supporting children with mental health needs? Again, that argument of lack of training is a genuine argument. If you're not trained in the area, how are you expected to approach that? Okay. And then you have the issue of self-respect. Fostering the practitioner's self-knowledge, integrity, and care. Now, self-knowledge has to do with, if you're asked to do something that you are not skilled at, it's honorable for you to say, oh, I'm not skilled at doing this, rather than doing it anyway and getting it wrong. Right? That's self-knowledge. You know what you can do, what you cannot do. If you can do it, then you have to do it. Now, care for self. Did you know that you are bound, wherever you work, by your contracts to actually take care of yourself? If you are reckless and you get injured while being reckless, you can actually be disciplined in your workplace. Did you know that? Because that then inhibits you from doing your job. And in the process, you are going to be failing to meet the child's needs because you've been reckless. It doesn't matter where you've been reckless, whether it's at home or anywhere. If you've been found to be reckless, you may actually be disciplined by your workplace. That's where care for self comes in. If I was reckless and I get injured due to my recklessness, to the point that I cannot stand in front of you teaching, then that disadvantages you. My recklessness. So I have to take care of myself. Okay? If I drank all night until 6 a.m. and then 9:30 a.m. I'm standing in front of students, that inhibits my ability to do my job properly. Okay? So I have to take care of myself. I'm glad I don't drink, so I'm all right. Right. Why do ethics matter? Right. Ethics do matter because they give us a sense of right and wrong. Okay? I'll leave you to make sense of those definitions there. Okay. But I like Roosevelt's quote, which says, to educate a person in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society. Remember what you said about Benjamin Bloom's and company, right? 3 domains of learning. You have the cognitive, the affective is also important. That's where you are learning to care. You are learning to be emotional, to have the right attitudes, right? So you have a cognitive, yes, that's fine. But if you just end it cognitive, you are producing half-baked graduates who don't care about people, right? And if you don't care about people, you may end up not getting a job, even if your degree says first class. You have to be caring, okay? So you have to educate in morals. And morals, when we say morals, that's where we're talking about ethics. Right, so who decides what is honest? Who decides what is respectful? We said different people have different takes. So who is going to make the decision on what is honest? Now this is Rashmo Kita. He's got 5 core moral values: honesty, respect, responsibility, fairness, compassion. Now, who is going to make that decision? Who is going to make that judgment when there's nothing written about compassion? No one can train you to be compassionate. Or is it a skill you can be trained in, to be compassionate?
No.
Yeah? That's the difficult thing about values. But who's going to make that decision whether or not you have the right values, you have the right level of honesty, you are respectful, you have responsibility, you have fairness, you have compassion? Who is going to make that decision? Who's going to make that judgments? Those judgments? There's no straightforward answer there, because different people have different takes. That's what makes ethics a difficult subject. Okay? Right. Now, can you do this as your homework? Okay. Discuss how fair may be different to equitable in the workplace or experience. So you're basing it on what happens in the workplace. Just give one example. Don't write about everything that happens in the workplace. Just one example. And then we'll discuss this next week. Okay? We're okay to move on?
No.
Not yet, okay. Right. Right. Now, one of my favorite authors on ethics is called Neil Noddings. Neil is spelled N-E-L-L. Among other things, he's known for what are known as ethics of care. And what she says here is quite profound. The first job of schools is not to educate, not to test children. It's not the curriculum. Rather, it is to care for our children. Right? I think I mentioned, is it last week, that when students come, they come as 2 in 1. There's the student, there's the human being. And what you want to take care of first is that human being. You take care of the human being, the student is well taken care of. Yesterday I was presenting a paper on pastoral approach to higher education. I'll share some of the findings with you when the journal article is out. We're writing it over the weekend. Now, that is quite profound. The first job of school is not buying books and so on. No. Children come into the through your doors. The first thing you want to do is you want to acknowledge them as human beings with needs. Take care of that human being, and the child is taken care of. the same applies to any education institution. I think the first job, even of our college, is to care for the students. Must show you care, right? There's a YouTube video there. I will leave you to watch in your own time. Okay? Because if children are not cared for, they cannot learn properly. You make them anxious. Students are coming from a range of backgrounds. Coming into school is transition for them. It's massive change. Suddenly you've uprooted them from their home to the school. You've uprooted them from what is familiar to what is unfamiliar. And that can cause a lot of anxieties. You don't know what the child is going through. And the child is also going through transitions in their development. And that causes a lot of anxiety amongst the children. And that needs to be acknowledged and to be taken care of. All right? Now, there is our guy. Okay? How do you pronounce this name? Careful. Okay. His first name is Manuel. Now, he tried to universalize ethics. By universalizing, I don't want to think people have dirty minds here. Anyway, right? He, after people had argued and debated that, ethics, you cannot come up with a list of ethics which apply to everyone. Emmanuel, how do you say the surname? Emmanuel, who? Yeah. He said, let's attempt to have a set of values on which we all agree, regardless of who you are, what gender you are, where you work, what you think your religion is, right? Regardless of where you come from, let's have a set of values. And these were known as universal ethical principles. Okay? Now, the question was, how should we think and act as human beings? Right? That's what he was trying to do. Right? How can I come up with a set of values which reflect how everyone is expected to act and think? Okay. We'll talk about so some of these ethical principles are what we covered here. Oh, these are drawn from the work that comes. Is that correct? Yeah. Did. Okay. Right. Now we've got those two authors, Dalbeck and Morse, 2005, right? Ethical framework does not require an active ethical practice. Instead, it provides guidance. That's where, again, where it becomes vague. If it is only guidance, it's something, guidance is something you may do. Law is what you must do. If it is guidance, this is what you should. Law, this is what you must. Okay? It shows our lack of confidence in what exactly we mean by ethics. And no one is prepared to say, yes, this is the set of ethics, let's follow the set. If you don't, you've broken the code. Although some professions, like I said, do have that. Okay. Right. Now, postmodern ethics, right? Postmodernity disagrees with having universal things. Postmodernity is about, let's make everything contextual. Each setting must have its own contextual ethics. So it's in disagreement with universal ethics. It says, right, what is best for the situation is what must be done in that particular instance. The problem is there's no consistency across individuals, across time frames. Right? Right, I'm not going to worry about that. I'll leave you to read and interpret that in your own time. And, right, like I said, regarding dilemmas, right, there's no ready-made solution. That's why it's difficult to be confident in what you're going to do or to be confident in whether to act or not to act, because there's no ready-made solution for the situation that you face. Nothing is written. You have to think on your feet. Sometimes, in practice, I mean, the guidance is you have to talk to whoever is your line manager in your setting and see that your line manager sees through the same lens as you do. If they don't, then probably you want to seek guidance before you act. Why? Because your actions and inactions have consequences. Right? Ethics of care, that is based on Neil Nording's work as well. Right? It's all about caring. Again, when he talks about ethics, make links to your current issue with this caring aspect of ethics. Okay. Again, they're discussing universal ethics. It's controversial to have universal ethics, right? But I think most of you, what I want you to do is look at those ethical principles, right? Beneficence, non-maleficence, and see if you agree with them. Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you not agree with? Right? And then you have Levina, ethics of encounter. Right, I'll skip that. And then you have issues to do with consent for others. Now, when you talk about ethics, we are talking about consent for others. In our context, in our subject area, in our sector, it's consent for children. Right? You go back to current issue. In what way does how it is handled show consent for children? Right. With further videos, ethical dilemmas, 2 YouTube videos there. You want us to go back? Yes, no? Were you still writing? Okay. All right. Now, further study. Okay? Further homework. Go and research and make notes on ethical principles and ethical dilemmas. And whatever you find, you need to consider how you're going to use it in your assignment. Okay. Right, are there any questions? Okay. Does what we have covered today make sense? Okay. Right. I wish you all a pleasant weekend. Okay. Drink in moderation.